batteria è praticamente scarica, twitteremo un po'. Io twitto male con questa roba qua, lo faccio ma twitto male. Io scarico più che altro. E poi ci sarà da stabilire appunto la traduzione del titolo.
Di questo?
Ne ho detto impatto, ma poi forse il ritorno, come dicevi tu. ROI. Ok. No, io parlo un momento, faccio solo un saluto. Ciao. Se potete prendere posto per piacere, così cominciamo. Possiamo chiudere questa porta per piacere? Buonasera, buon pomeriggio veramente, dai, se no mi sento papa. Buon pomeriggio. Io mi chiamo Mario Tedeschini Lalli, sono qui in rappresentanza della Online News Association, che è la più grande organizzazione di giornalismo digitale del mondo, che abbiamo organizzato da alcuni anni alcuni eventi qui insieme agli amici del Festival del giornalismo dal 2009. Mi fa molto piacere di avere con noi ovviamente Sergio Maistrello, che è un amico da molto tempo, e Anthony De Rosa, e questo evento fa parte appunto di una serie di eventi che abbiamo tenuto e che ancora terremo in questo festival. In particolare l'appuntamento poi prossimo è quello di domani alle 5 con Eric Carvin, Greg Galland e Anna Masera, in cui parleremo un po', diciamo così, delle varie cose, cercheremo di tirare le somme di alcune delle cose che si sono dette anche in questi giorni al festival. Lascio la parola a Sergio Maistrello, che è giornalista, scrittore, docente di giornalismo digitale, autore di numerosi libri in proposito, oltre che vecchio amico dell'ONA da molto tempo. Prego.
Bene, buongiorno, benvenuti. Io in realtà c'è la traduzione, sì, chi ha bisogno della traduzione può prendere le cuffie all'entrata della sala. Io ho il compito di introdurvi Anthony, che in realtà farà la sua presentazione, dopodiché ci sarà largo spazio per l'interazione con chi ha domande e vuole approfondire il tema. Il tema di oggi è molto intrigante ed si concentra su come misurare l'impatto delle notizie nei social media. Noi veniamo da un mondo dove gli strumenti ma anche le metriche per capire come le nostre storie circolavano e che successo avevano e come potevamo spingerle in modo particolarmente efficace, avevamo ben chiaro come funzionava. Oggi nei social media stiamo imparando un nuovo linguaggio, stiamo prendendo le misure di un ambiente completamente nuovo e completamente diverso. A guidarci in questo percorso è uno dei giovani giornalisti internazionali emergenti che più hanno dimostrato di capire e saper innovare in questo mondo, è Anthony De Rosa, che è il social media editor di Reuters. Ha ricevuto anche il premio Reuters per l'innovazione nello storytelling, e a lui abbiamo chiesto appunto di raccontarci, di farci vedere, di farci capire come ricominciare a misurare, a capire, a reinventare l'impatto delle nostre notizie nei social media. Dopo la sua presentazione sarete voi in qualche modo protagonisti con i vostri spunti e le vostre domande. Prego Anthony.
Grazie. Buongiorno. Thank you all for coming. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things in the subject of what is the return on investment on your reporting. So some of the main topics are, why are we reporting in the first place? What are we getting from the reporting that we're doing? What are the returns that we're looking for? How can we be more efficient? How can we do things so we can save money, utilize the shared resources that are out there available to all of us? We're also going to talk a little bit about how are we monetizing the journalism that we're producing? How are we tracking the audience and the reach that we're gaining from putting out the reports that we're doing? How are we targeting advertising? We'll talk a little bit about advertising because generally that's still the main source of income for the reporting that we're doing. And also we'll look a little bit at what are alternative sources of revenue for our reports. So first we'll start off with why do we report in the first place? Well, the main reason we all are reporting is because we want to inform our readers. We want to get to the truth. We do it for a higher level of wanting to be part of the conversation, better society. And we also are trying to raise the profile of ourselves as individual journalists and of the organization that we represent. When I'm reporting for Reuters, sometimes I'm working in a capacity where I'm using different social media platforms. I'm using Twitter, and I'm representing the organization, but I'm out there as myself, and I'm doing a lot of updates under my own banner. But at the same time, I'm also representing Reuters with all the reports that I'm doing. We also, we're reporting because we want to help people make better civic decisions. So when people are voting, when they're going and making decisions about how they want their town or their state or their country, what direction they want it to go, the reports that we are putting out are helping them understand the world around them better, understand the leadership that represents them, decide are they doing a good job or are they doing a poor job. We also report to help our clients, the people who are purchasing our newspapers, are going to our websites, make better business decisions. Reuters in particular, their business is very much focused on people who are traders, people who make money off of the speed that they're able to gain information. And they'll use things like the Reuters icon application, which will give them very up to this nanosecond updates on things that are happening in the market. And that's very valuable. They pay a lot of money to have that advantage over other people who may not have the access to the information that they do. We already spoke about how it helps people understand the world outside their backyard better. And at the end of the day, we're trying to make money so we can have a sustainable business. So let's talk about some of the different types of returns that we get from our reporting. Obviously, we're gaining traffic. Traffic is the #1 metric that we're looking at. How many people are coming to the website? Page views, unfortunately, are still kind of the metric that the people who are selling our access to our news as a way to decide, how much value they can gain from it. It's a commodity. The page views are still very much a commodity. Although more and more we're finding that the banners that are the main mode of selling page views are not that valuable. The people who view them often don't click on the ads. They just kind of fade into the background. So we're really struggling with trying to figure out what the next source of revenue will be. Other returns are comments, how often people are commenting on our reports. And we're going to talk a lot about this, the social shares, how often people are sharing the news that we're reporting on. And the thing that I think that makes social such a huge and important element of the returns that we're gaining is it's bringing in new readers. The things that we get from Facebook shares, from Twitter retweets, is that it's oftentimes, more often, new people that we're bringing in. It's not the same readers that have already come to our website who already know the type of reporting that we're doing. They're already loyal customers. The social world brings in new eyeballs that we didn't have before. Media mentions is another way to track and get a sense of how well we're doing. We use Google Alerts for individual journalists and also for mentions of our organization. If you're not already doing it, use Google Alerts and set up an alert for your name, for your colleagues' names, and for the name of your organization, so you can track what kind of mentions you're getting from other organizations, other news organizations. Followers and audience, that's going to how many Twitter followers are following your organization's account, your individual accounts. We'll talk a little bit about Muckrack later and how they're a good way to track the following of all your colleagues and all the different organizations that are in your area that you report in. Clients, that's another way we're also trying to gauge our influence and our return. With Reuters, we have two sides of the business. We have the consumer-facing side, which I work in, Reuters.com being the main shop window, if you will, to what we do. And on the other side of that are the clients that purchase our news to plug it into their website, plug it into their newspapers. Places like CNN purchase access to our video so they can put that into their reporting that they do on the air. So obviously, as you're bringing in new clients, that's another way to track the type of returns that you're getting. Reputation, it's not as a tangible way to measure, but you can get a sense of your reputation being positive or negative by listening to what people are saying in those mentions in the media and also in social media. So reputation is a very important return that you get from what you're producing. And then there's just this halo effect, the brand building that you're doing. Reuters has had to really try to build their brand in America because it's not really as well known as the New York Times, as Washington Post, as some of the more traditionally American media outlets. Reuters is much more well known here in Europe and in Asia than it is in America. And by putting more emphasis on our consumer-facing products, we've begun to get a foothold and become a more well-known name in the United States. And I think social media has also played a big part in that because we're bringing in viewers that we may not have had in the past. We're able to reach out to a whole different demographic and audience that we weren't able to reach before. So part of increasing our returns is becoming more efficient. A lot of the discussions that I've heard here while I've been at the festival is about saving money by not replicating work. Number one is being able to understand what the right tools to use are. Some of the products that are out in the marketplace now that can make it easier to not duplicate work are plugging into something like Storyful, which is looking at all the social media content that's newsworthy, finding those really big breaking news videos, connecting you with sources. Otherwise, some very small organizations would have difficulty trying to track down all the people that they could be tapping into for reports about what's going on in Syria, what's going on in Bahrain and Libya. And a tool like Storyful would help you connect to all those specific sources that you particularly wanted to speak to. So that's one example of knowing what the right tools are to be more efficient. A lot of organizations, they are still very much in the idea that they have to own everything, they have to do everything themselves. Well, I think part of being more efficient is using the technique of collaborative journalism, looking out to other places that are reporting and knowing when you can link out. Jeff Jarvis always talks about do your best and link to the rest. And I think that's a really underrated way of bringing everyone a broad spectrum of news. You may not be the best source for certain topics of information, and I think it's really useful to absorb a lot of information and know where to point people to for different topics that you may not be the best arbiter or the expert for. So knowing who those experts are and knowing where to point people to is a great way to leverage the collaborative journalism ethos. Using the crowd as sources, obviously crowdsourcing can help you become more efficient by finding out from people on the ground who are experiencing things firsthand and pulling that information back and plugging it into the different platforms that you have. Listening to feedback, using your social channels as a way to do your job better. We always are asking people what we can do better on our main social accounts. I do it on @Reuters. I do it on our Facebook page. There's 1 million followers on our, 2.7 million followers on our @Reuters account. Being able to tap into that many people and ask them questions about what they think we're doing is a really useful, powerful tool that we can tap into. and being able to understand better about what people think about what product we're putting out. Another thing is, today it's very expensive and not even an option for a lot of places to send their reporters to far off locations, either because it's too dangerous or they can't afford the overhead to put them on a plane and put them up in different places to report on. So it's much more efficient for us to look at ways that we can gather that information in other ways, looking at reporting that's being done and put on social media, YouTube. There's tons and tons of people who are freelancers who are really just trying to get their name out there. We can look at the information and videos that they're posting on YouTube, the photos that they're putting up on Flickr. And you need to really build a network of people that you can trust and understand what type of content is verified, doing some background work on the sources and the information that they're putting out there. That's where we should be directing our resources, in verification, and not so much having to use people resources and putting them out in these different locations. Tapping into communication channels, that's again going and looking at what's going out on social media, leveraging all the different social networks to listen in. I always encourage our journalists to build good source lists, and Twitter is actually a really good place to do that. We can build individual lists that focus on different topics and follow people who are often tweeting live reports on different places or different topics. So that allows us to tap into specific communication channels. And that's part of building a global network, by listening in on all the different channels that we build over time. Again, instead of having to do all the work of matching what other reports are out there, I see this all the time, and it really discourages me that even in my organization, that they feel the need to match other reports. And I don't really see the value in that. A lot of times, someone will break a piece of news, and then we feel like we have to just get some small incremental piece of information that pushes that story further. But when someone else has already broken it, we should be just linking out to those sources. I don't feel like organizations should always have this competitive nature that, the Wall Street Journal got this first, or the Associated Press got this first. We should just simply link out to these sources. And then the value that you create for yourself is that people will look to you for all the news, that you become a beacon for things not only that you're reporting, but they'll come to you as a source for what all the other organizations and independent reporters and freelancers are reporting. So I think it's really good to be a navigator of news and not try to feel like you have to own everything. Video is freely available in a lot of cases. With our live blogs, we often embed NBC video, because NBC often is in all the places where we want to give a visual aspect. So embed when you can. I subscribe to NBC's email list, and they let us know ahead of time that they're going to have video for different major news events. And I freely take that video, I embed it on our live blogs, and we have a visual component that goes along with all the other updates that we're plugging into our live reports. So whenever you can find any type of live video, embed it when you can. Instead of sending out your own folks to videotape something, why would you bother spending those resources when you can embed video that's freely available? And I think what you really need to understand is, think about where you can add value and give something different that's not already out there. There's so much duplicative reporting being done. We need to figure out where we can fit into what's not already being said. If you have another take on all this, and this happens to go, this definitely applies to breaking news, and I feel like the breaking news aspect is very duplicative. We need to find our own angles. We have to figure out how we can insert ourselves and bring something new or different to the table. It could be through infographics, working with your multimedia team, your data team to figure out how you present things in different ways. Presentation, working with your graphics team to present things in a more interesting way. So instead of just rehashing reports that 10, 20 other outlets are all reporting the same thing, you need to figure out how to bring something else to the table. So let's talk about how are we monetizing this reporting that we're doing. Again, like I said before, it's still really an ad-supported model, and a lot of it is keyword targeted. And if you look at what social networks are doing with the reports that we're producing, a lot of it is around the profiles that people are building on these social networks, looking at their past behaviors and the information that they're providing about themselves. So that's really continuing to be the future of how organizations, aside from traditional media organizations, are monetizing content. And it may be interesting to look how news organizations will use the same type of behavior. I wonder that the same way that we target ads, we may start to target editorial. So people are delivered specific information based on their prior behavior, what their browsing history is, for instance. Page views, again, still the commodity. We're starting to see more native advertising. It's not that new. When you look at the print model, there was advertorial, back in the 40s and 50s. Even in the early days of television, you had Mobile Oil sponsoring the variety shows back in the early days of television. This is just another example of what native advertising is today. BuzzFeed is one of the outlets that are putting a lot of emphasis on native advertising. It's sort of something that a lot of journalists struggle with and don't want to be a part of. And oftentimes these organizations hire people who specifically focus on native advertising. It's sort of like an agency that is sitting within the journalistic operation that people are working in. Another way that the Business Insider, for example, it does a lot of this. They holding conferences is another revenue-generating method. Paid content, another website that holds a lot of conferences to be able to sustain their business. And in many cases, I think they've said, and Business Insider in particular, a lot of the money that they generate is through these conferences. It helps keep the editorial business afloat. Even with Reuters, we have many other channels of income that help us put money into the editorial operation. Being able to build and develop products that provide very specific services is a way to monetize and keep the editorial business running. Paywalls, you look at the New York Times, I think has been to date the most successful at making their paywall work. And I think the reason why the New York Times paywall works so well is because it's leaky. It allows you to get into stories and read a little bit until you finally reach that point where they're going to ding you over the head and ask you, would you like to subscribe if you want to continue reading more content on our site? I think you're going to see more organizations get to the point where they're going to have to consider putting up a paywall, and it's not a terrible thing. Most of the time, they allow social shares to get access unlimited to the content on their site because it's a way for them to market their content, and they're happy to give access to people if they're coming in through social media. I mentioned just a minute ago upselling information services. With Reuters, we have other products like Westlaw that we use as a way to sell to lawyers. We have medical information. So having information services aside from just straight editorial is a way that you can monetize the editorial that you're doing that's very specialized. I think something that hasn't really been tapped into is thinking about creating pro accounts. So if you're if you specialize in certain type of editorial, creating a pro account that would give people very a limited access to information that would help them monetize the information that you're giving them. So if it's someone who works in an industry where the information would give them an advantage, a pro account that gives them access to information that they can then go and trade on if they're in the business of Wall Street, that might be an option that you can monetize content as well. And also thinking about a lot of people build mobile apps that are separate from what they're delivering on their websites. Considering charging a small amount for those mobile apps, or within those mobile apps upselling other services is a way that you can monetize. Video ads are different than the way that you're getting ads on a traditional website, because oftentimes you're being forced to watch those ads. And I think it's one of the few places now where people are watching advertising. If you look at TV, most people are watching things time shifted. They have DVRs, they're fast forwarding through commercials. We don't yet, in most cases, have the option to fast forward through ads on videos. And I think video ads are one of the few remaining places where you have a captive audience. So I think you should be putting a lot more value on those types of ads and charging a higher premium to your advertisers when you're using pre-roll or post-roll ads. I think the ability to get access to specific video that people have a strong desire to view is another way to monetize, charging for access to that video. And thinking about delivering a la carte news, specialized, customized news, and charging an upsell for getting access to very customized news. So now I want to move on to some of the tools that you can use to analyze how well you're doing. And we're going to look at a couple of them. We're going to look at Sprout Social. We'll look at Twitter Analytics, Muckrack, Facebook Insights, Chartbeat, Simply Measured, and Parsley. So out of all the kind of suites that allow you to track your social spread, your reach, the one that I've really been most impressed with is Sprout Social. The interface is really clean, easy to navigate. They allow you to track all the social networks that you're on. They're tracking Facebook, they're tracking Twitter. They have a great mobile app you can see in the bottom right that allows you to track how you're doing when you're not at your desktop and you want to track things on your mobile devices. They break down by demographics. You can see how many people, how many women and men are accessing your content, how many of them are sharing it. They're counting impressions to see how many total people are seeing what you're putting out there. There's also the ability to put your content, to put your social platforms into groups. So say you have people in your organization who are specifically tasked with covering business, or they're tasked with covering technology. You can limit access to them for just the specific social platforms that they're involved with, and it makes it easy to assign tasks for them to do, to run reports. And here's another look at some of the metrics that they're providing, showing specific stories and how far the reach they got, showing how many people saw it, engaged, meaning how many people shared it or commented on it or liked it if it's a Facebook post. The next product to show you is Twitter Analytics. So this is looking at specifically the reach that your updates on Twitter are getting. So over time, on the top, you can see how well you're doing in terms of how many mentions you're getting on specific days. I'll use this and I'll see peaks And it's usually when there's a big breaking event, we'll start to see a lot more retweets. Oftentimes when there's not a link, and you can see this top one here, it's about the White House says options for dealing with Syria chemical weapons. Use, include, but are not exclusive to military force. So for whatever reason, we found that we're getting a larger reach when we're just putting out tweets without a link. And we use things like the breaking tag to push those tweets into streams that more people will see them. So a lot of people are tracking a hashtag like breaking because they want to know whatever the breaking news of the day is. So using specific hashtags is another way to put yourself out there in front of a larger group. Muckrack is another great service that I recommend. This is good for tracking how your colleagues are doing in terms of gaining followers. Also looking at your competition, the other news organizations that are out there. Who are the most followed people for those organizations? You can see at Reuters, Felix Salmon and Jim Roberts are two of the most followed people at Reuters. And they also allow you to track the social spread of your stories. You can see it's kind of small, but if you look on the bottom right of the lead, there's the Twitter icon and the Facebook icon, and it's telling us how many Twitter shares and how many Facebook shares you've received for the different stories that you're putting out there. And it actually shows you the tweets that people posted for those stories. Facebook Insights, to be honest with you, I'm not really that happy about the statistics and analytics that Facebook provides right now. They only let you go back 90 days, so you can't really do a wide range of reporting on how you're doing on Facebook. The only way that you could really get a look at how you did 6 months before, a year before, is to export that data. So you're forced to take the data in Facebook Insights and import it into a different product. Sprout Social is one of those products that will listen to your Facebook Insights over time and allow you to do more long-term analysis of your reach. So I definitely, instead of using the internal Facebook Insights, which are very limited, I recommend using a product like Social Sprout, which would allow you to do a bit more long-term tracking. Chartbeat is kind of, some people refer to it as analytics on crack because it allows you to track things in real time. People get addicted to tracking Chartbeat. A lot of newsrooms use this big board function so that their reporters can kind of compete to see who's got the most shared story or who's got the story that's getting the most views at any given time. So this is the board for Gizmodo, one of the Gawker sites, and what the top stories are at this particular moment in time. And this thing is updating in seconds. So every moment someone hits the site, these numbers are changing, and they can see the stories going up and down on the big board. This is the full dashboard for a product that Chartbeat sells called Newsbeat. And Newsbeat is really focused for editorial publishers, and it allows you to see in real time how many people are on your site, and in seconds how many are coming or going. And over time you can see the rise and fall over the last couple of hours. Then just below that, you can see what stories are the most popular that given day and where the traffic sources are coming from. So direct being people going directly to the website. You can see how many people are linking to it and also how many are coming from social. And this is specific to the content, so you could drill a little bit deeper and see how many people are viewing any particular story on the site at any given time. And this is just specific to social. So you can see here it breaks it down by telling you how many Twitter shares you've received for that story, how many likes for that story, and how many shares on Facebook. And it also gives you a real-time stream of the mentions on Twitter. Another product that's really useful for analyzing your audience is Simply Measured. They will track how you're doing across different social networks and compare which networks are doing the best at getting your story out and who's most engaged on those social networks. So who's commenting, who's sharing it with other people on those social networks. They have a lot of different types of analytics here. Engagement trend, which is showing what the best social network is for that particular day. It's showing that this particular site is doing really well on Google+, but it's not doing so well on Facebook. Then there's the engagement of percentage of the audience. It looks like Instagram is where their most engaged audience is, and Google+ is where their least engaged audience is. And they give some other metrics here. Engagement as a percentage of followers. I mean, you can get really granular with trying to look at this data. Another one is Parsley. And the thing that makes Parsley unique is that it allows you to make editorial decisions on the fly, showing you what stories are popular on certain social networks and search engines, and allowing you to connect this to your CMS so you can quickly take a story that's doing really well on social and move it up higher on your website. So a story may be buried somewhere in one of the topic sections, and if it's doing really well and you want it to be seen by people who are not just active on social networks and want it to be seen by the broader audience that you have, you can plug in Parsley with your CMS and then push stories to the top of your homepage. So that concludes the analytics portion. I wanted to talk about workflow and collaboration. Workflow being how the process that you develop for how you publish your stories, and collaboration, how you work together with your colleagues to decide what you're going to publish and how you gather information and data for how you're going to put your stories together. And 3 products that I think are really useful for improving your workflow and your collaboration are Sponge, Visual Revenue, and Campfire. The Sponge is a way that you can pull in all the different data sources, whether you're seeing stuff on YouTube, if you're seeing things linked on other websites, if you're seeing tweets that you think are newsworthy, or if you're just starting to develop stories of your own. All the different people who are reporting can plug in the information that they're finding while they're out on the ground. You can see that they're mobile devices that can plug into Sponge. So if you're out in the field and you're reporting, you can use your mobile device to enter in some of the information about what you're reporting on, share it with your colleagues. So this is a really useful tool that I recommend to collaborate and to share different pieces of content with your colleagues. Another one is Visual Revenue. Visual Revenue is similar to Parsley in that it plugs in directly to your CMS, and you don't actually have to do any coding. You don't have to do a lot of coding, is what I should say. There's a piece of one little piece of code similar to what you do with Google Analytics to track traffic on your site. And what this does is it puts a layer on top of your website that allows you to do things like A/B testing. So if I want to try out a different headline, but I don't want to plug into my CMS and have to keep changing the headline from one to another, Visual Revenue will have a layer that sits above your page and can try 2 different types of headlines, and it'll report back to you which headline worked better. And then you can then go into your CMS and make the manual change based on which headline worked better through this sort of visual layer that sits on top of your website. They also do that for stories, and you can have modules that will automatically be populated with the most popular stories on your website based on the social lift that they're getting, if they're doing well on Twitter, if they're doing well on Facebook. These modules will highlight that different type of content on sections of the site. Campfire, finally, is where we do a lot of collaboration at Reuters, both from a developer standpoint and from an editorial standpoint. I use it with my social media team to do things like let them know what are the current live blogs that we're focusing on. We have a number of rolling topic live blogs, which means these are live blogs that are constantly running, and sometimes we're updating them quite a bit, and sometimes we're just doing it, every hour. I refer to them as hover and dive live blogs. And then there's other ones that are very active. Things like the Boston bombing would be an example of one that we were keeping a very close eye on for a short period of time. And this is really useful for just, bouncing back and forth ideas, using it to verify social media content that you're seeing. So I might post a video that I'm looking for other people in the newsroom to help us verify. I'll send them the link to our Campfire thread. They'll put in some notes and say, well, this doesn't look like what we know of that area. It looks a little bit different than what I know. Or there's things that exist in that video that didn't exist 2 days ago or 2 months ago. So we'll use it as a way to kind of discuss what we're seeing, and it's sort of a back channel before we publish things. And the chat room is more of a real-time back and forth. Aside from the threaded discussions, the chat room will allow us to have very quick feedback going back and forth. So quickly talking about ad tracking, because again, since ads are where the main source of revenue that we're generating, as journalists, we should, try to understand a little bit more about how that's done. The different ways that ads are leveraged through geolocation, delivering ads because a person is coming to the website from a specific region. Sometimes we're delivering ads because we profile people by the cookies that they have. I know in some countries you actually don't allow that. And in the US they do, but in certain parts of Europe, I believe that cookie tracking is not something that you're allowed to do at all. Buying traffic based on demographics. Sometimes sites will actually purchase traffic, so send people to my site based on the fact that they enjoy reading about certain types of content. That's sort of frowned upon by some folks, but others, they feel like they can leverage that traffic in other ways. So they're sort of doing arbitrage on that traffic. Social referrals, I think, are the best type of ads that you can generate money from. So if you're pulling in people from Twitter or Facebook, and you have some information through the social graph, Facebook allows you to get general information about the people that are viewing your content. They won't give you specific information, but they'll tell you, oh, this person is in a certain age demographic. They purchased, certain types of things in the past. So being able to tap into the social graph and deliver ads that way can be very valuable. Behavior of your browsing history, looking at what places you've been before, that's also tracked into cookies and ways that you can deliver information. Looking at the domain you're coming from. So if I see that I'm tracking that it's coming from a government domain or educational domain, I may tailor the content based on that domain. And retargeting is something that you often see. I'll go to Amazon and I'll look at a coffee maker, and then I'll wind up seeing that coffee maker trying to be sold to me again on the website that I'm now on. So they kind of follow you around and they try to get you to purchase something no matter where you are. There's something that happens that most of us don't even realize, that there's this real-time bidding that occurs when someone heads to a website. So when I get to a website, sometimes there's this thing where I'm on a page and all of a sudden a bidding takes place for my view. A publisher will send out a bid request to thousands of potential advertisers, and they're saying, hey, this is the demographic of the person who's on the site. They're 30, they're Indian, they're male, they're based in New Jersey, and they've recently searched for tickets to Delhi, and they're on our page. Anyone who happens to run an air travel site, you can bid on this view, and it's happening constantly. It's happening in nanoseconds. So the publisher decides very quickly, they want to target that person, and the ad is presented to them. So this is another way that people are generating revenue, and it's actually growing at an incredible pace now because they can deliver very finely targeted ads to the people that are viewing your site. And I started to think about this, why not use this same type of technique to deliver specific editorial? Why not use the same type of ad targeting to deliver passive customization to readers? I don't think that active customization works really well. I don't think people spend a lot of time going in and customizing their pages, although it would bring them a much more richer experience if they did. If we were able to deliver more passive customization, I think we would keep readers on our site longer. We would have more return viewership. And if we could kind of tap into the same techniques that advertisers use, we might be able to build a better relationship with our readers, give them content that they actually are interested in reading. And I know this does cause the issue of creating an echo chamber, people only reading about the things that they already care about and not getting a view of things outside of their own worldview. So it really is a balance of delivering news that they need to know and news that they want to know. So this should just be a component of that. And finally, some alternative revenue sources. Aside from just the editorial that you're producing and doing in a traditional manner, consulting. If you are a specialist of a certain topic, or let's say that you spent a lot of time in very dangerous areas, you could be a consultant to tell other journalists what they need to know, what equipment they should have. People who know a lot about mobile journalism, consulting about how to use mobile tools to go out and report. That's a great alternative revenue source. Freelancing, obviously, there's a lot of websites now where you can offer up your specific knowledge area to different places. Agency and content rights management is another revenue source. So if you're producing a lot of content and you can also be an agent for people who are photographers, editorial folks who need someone to kind of represent the work that they're doing, that's a great alternative revenue source. Specifically doing research, researching topics that journalists are reporting on. And I think social media is a very hot area for being a researcher in, because not everyone knows how to use the tools to track down the video that you need or the photo that you're looking for. So being a social researcher for journalists is a great alternative revenue surge. Learning to develop and learning to be a coder, I think, is a great tool to have. I started out as a technologist, and I got into editorial later in life. And I think being able to have some of those skills about knowing how to code, knowing how to develop, can help you in those lean years when you're not able to have as much revenue generated from your reporting, but you can go off and use some of that development skills that you have. I think you should always remember that your time and your knowledge is valuable. It's scarce and it's marketable. The skills that you have are not something that everyone has the knowledge to do. So I think you should keep that in mind, not give away what you're producing, and also the knowledge that you have. You should hold it tight to your vest and deliver it in ways that's going to benefit you as well. And it's not all about trying to market it and give it and put a price tag on it. You have to find a balance between showcasing your talents and selling them. So that's sort of what I've done, is try to create platforms where I can present work that I've done. I think it's good to have a central place where you can show people the work that you've done in the past, and use that as a selling point for work that you would do in the future. And that's all.
Thank you very much, è stato molto interessante e molto completo nella panoramica. Possiamo aprire direttamente le domande, direi, a questo punto. Se ci sono già dubbi, richieste di chiarimenti, ne vedo già alcune. Abbiamo un microfono, sta arrivando. Qui davanti.
Salve, io vorrei sapere qual è l'opinione di Anthony riguardo al modello di business che Andrew Sullivan sta attuando per il suo blog The Dish al momento, molto simile a quello che sta facendo il New York Times, appunto dei mini abbonamenti o mensili o giornalieri.
So, Andrew Sullivan is who you're referring to, right? Yeah. So this is sort of the Radiohead model, right? I think some people can pull this off and some people can't. I think Andrew is special in the fact that he already had a very eager audience for the content he's producing. People know who Andrew is. He was getting a certain amount of traffic before he decided to do that. And I think if you're someone like Andrew who's already built up a following, then that's an option that's available to you. They call it the Radiohead option because Radiohead is able to go and sell their albums because people already know who they are. I think it's much more difficult for an independent artist or an independent writer to get the type of scale that you would need to have your business to be sustainable in the way that Andrew does. I think Kickstarter, there needs to be a Kickstarter for journalists where they can tell people that they're going to report on an important topic that they believe is going to be so positive for society or is going to tell some truth that people need, that they will fund that effort, and then they'll have enough capital to do what they need to do to report on it. So I encourage someone to create that Kickstarter for journalists so they could fund it. I think there are, the Knight Foundation creates grants. There's other places that creates grants, but something that's more readily available and more frequently available would allow people to do something similar to what Andrew does, but I think in a different process.
Hey Anthony, how's it going? I'm Eric Harvin, I'm social media editor at AP. I have a question that this is something that's come up before a few times, I think. Looking at the lists of tools that you were discussing, I'm thinking of the analytics ones in particular. There must have been a dozen items on there. And I know this is something we struggle with where I am too. Do you feel like you need to go to too many different places to get the information you need? Do you feel like that great sort of solution to that problem is still not really out there?
Yeah. The reason why I rolled off so many different types of analytic products is because even something like Sprout that kind of gets you 70% of the way there doesn't give you all the information that you want to track about how far your reach is when it comes to social media. I don't know why that is. I don't know why there isn't one particular product that does everything you want it to do. But there's an opportunity there for people who are developers, are very good with data, to develop a product that can kind of be the all-consuming analytics tool for social media. And also because it's constantly changing, the metrics that we want to track are based upon APIs that Twitter makes available, that Facebook makes available. And every time they change something, you have to go and update the way that you're tracking all this information. So it's time consuming, and it costs money for these analytics companies to make those changes. So they're not always able to keep up. And you wonder why Facebook doesn't spend more money on providing better analytics. The products that they offer internally aren't very good, and they make it difficult for third parties to track their traffic. So I don't really know. I don't know why that is.
No? Okay, great, thanks. Hi Anthony, this is Johannes from Scopinion.com. Looking at the list of the metrics that you had on the first slide, I think, there is, I think, always lacking one very important metric, which I find stunning that people don't include it in those lists and also don't measure it, and that would be the text to audience interaction or time spent on the site. And just a bit of a background. For example, brand advertising, usually it's based on the time which the ad is seen, how the brand recall and brand recognition is actually like affecting people or whatever, however you want to call it. And I'm just like wondering why isn't that included in any kind of metrics, especially in the time when, for example, the panels yesterday mentioned multiple times that the future of journalism is in the long form, and not really counting clicks. So I'm just curious, like, how would you answer this question?
I agree with you. I think time spent on site is more valuable than page use, because people can click on your page, they read an article, they leave, they never come back again. The reason why I think it hasn't taken hold is because the folks who are selling access and selling ads on our websites, they don't really factor that in when they're selling advertising for our websites. They can say that, and it's sort of like it's a way for them to bring greater importance to what you do. It sort of says, oh, people care about what we're writing about because they spend a lot of time on our site, but it's not something they can directly quantify and sell in increments like they can page views. I'm hoping that in the future there's a way that the brokers of advertising for our sites can factor that in a way that can monetize it in individual increments.
All right, thanks. Yeah, the point is that the counting the time or actual exposure, that's really trivial. We're doing that on Scoopinion. We're actually using the data for aggregation. We're aggregating long form. But I mean, it's not a big deal. We have for example, we who are not even trying to lob the advertising or counting the advertisement revenue. We have the data industry wide.
That's great.
So I mean, I just find it like, I think the reason, like you mentioned, I think the reason is that the advertisers don't really want to go there because they actually make more money this way.
Right. They have to pay more.
Exactly. But I mean, on the other hand, the media sites who are selling the space for these like banner places, they should really start at some point looking at this opportunity of selling their ads on like actual exposure time.
Yeah, it's always been this problem of there's too much inventory. With the web, there's infinite number of places that advertisers could go and advertise on. But again, if you can put a premium on certain types of content, the time on site, then you can start to charge a bit more. But being able to get access to those metrics is much more difficult.
According to you, what are the dangers of letting your editorial decisions being influenced by statistics and metrics?
Yeah, I think these are tools that should be taken into account, but it shouldn't be gospel. It's supposed to allow you to make certain decisions at certain times when, for instance, if you are a small organization and you can't manage your website actively all the time, but you want to be able to plug in news that's relevant to the people who are on your website in off hours when you're not able to actively manage it. You know, this would allow you to automatically plug in those stories that are getting a lot of social lift, for instance. So I think that's a very important point that you make. We shouldn't be beholden to information, but and data, but it should be a tool that we have to make certain decisions at certain times.
Hi, it's Kazimir from Scribble Live. I was thinking about native advertising, and particularly with mobile, now that there are many new models coming out with regard to native advertising on mobile. As a journalist, how comfortable are you with the visual blur between actual content and paid-for content when maybe the audience can't really tell because it's just shaded slightly different?
I think people will lose trust in the organizations that don't draw a bright line between what's editorial and what's native advertising, as they're starting to call it more and more. And that might have an effect on how often people will continue to go to those types of sites that make it, you know, are basically trying to fool people into reading content that's not actually editorial. It's definitely a problem, and it's something that people who are very pure journalists are frightened about. And I think we're going to deal with it more and more because the fact that banner ads are really starting to completely die away and we're having to look at alternative ways to advertise, that's going to be an issue that we're going to continue to struggle with. And I think it's in the best interest of the people who create native advertising to make it look more like editorial. So that's definitely a real problem, and I don't know. I don't think we yet know the repercussions for the people that are advertising in that way and how much of an impact it'll make on their traffic.
Non abbiamo più domande? Ok, una curiosità mia, volevo sapere se per caso conoscevi e come valutavi metriche innovative nella pubblicità come il cosiddetto cost per influence sperimentato da Listapart o 37 Signals con DAC Network. Pensi sia una possibile strada da approfondire e percorrere o ancora troppo giovane, troppo aleatoria?
So you mean influencers, people who may have a little bit more value than other viewers?
Yeah, metriche che cercano di tradurre il tuo posizionamento nella rete, il fatto di essere più influente, di avere un'influenza nei confronti di una comunità di lettori, di pari, in network abbastanza verticali specifici.
Like clout, for instance?
Io conosco bene The DAC Network, non ne conosco altri, di sicuro non abbiamo in Italia, in Europa. Simili.
Yeah, so there's premium advertising networks that they'll only accept sites that they feel are very high value. I think that is you have to have a certain type of content that you feel like you can almost be snobbish about the type of advertising that you'll allow. But it's oftentimes people who are operating with small shops or their specialty topics. And I don't think it's for everyone. I don't think it's for general news producers because they have to appeal to a wider audience. But if you are a specialist, if you're speaking about specific topics, those type of networks are actually more valuable, not only for you because they will bring in a higher price tag for the ads, but for the advertisers as well because they're targeting a very specific audience, an affluent audience often, or an audience who's very particular about the type of advertising that they'll want to have presented to them.
Se non ci sono altre domande, io direi che possiamo ringraziare. No, abbiamo un ultimo intervento.
Se posso, riferisco un tweet che io ho twittato, una notazione che Anthony faceva, che mi sembra di aver capito bene che ha fatto, che suggeriva di lui che ha un passato di programmatore di imparare il codice, di imparare a programmare per due ragioni. Perché si è migliori giornalisti in questa maniera del nuovo ambiente e perché può dare, come dire, in casi di difficoltà, fonti di ricavo aggiuntive nei momenti di difficoltà. Questo ho capito e questo ho twittato. Proprio in questo momento una persona ha risposto dicendo quindi anche imparare a fare la pizza al taglio ci può aiutare. Allora, io adesso sto per rispondere che naturalmente fare la pizza al taglio può aiutare in casi di crisi economica, ma non aiuta particolarmente a fare i giornalisti.
Well, the difference I would say is that the coding could be used to enhance your work as a journalist because data journalism is such a big part of what we do today. It allows us to plug in information in visual ways. But yeah, you're right. If I really needed to find an alternative source of income, learning to be a chef is not a terrible idea as well.
Bene, grazie mille, grazie a voi per essere intervenuti, grazie a Anthony De Rosa per la sua rassegna di strumenti e vi aspettiamo domani pomeriggio. Mario, mi ricordi l'ora?
Domani pomeriggio alle 5.
Per l'ultimo appuntamento con gli eventi organizzati da Olinei. Grazie.